Okay, thank you. It's a honor for us to be here. So the presentation name is Community-Based in Avitourism as a Tool for Environmental Appropriation. The authors are the teacher Andres Camilo Perez and me, Jorge Mora or George. Okay, it doesn't matter. And Camilo, the teacher Camilo, he's teacher about natural science. In my case, I am tourism research. Okay, so the introduction of this presentation. So basically, we are going to talk about the community base in tourism. It's a tourism characteristic by the self management for inhabitants of the territory, and it is mainly in the rural territory. So in this research, we describe the environmental appropriation for the community up in a farm located in the south of Bogota, and we describe the environmental practice articulated between the community base of tourism and the bird watching. So why the Avitourism? The Avitourism is pretty important because Colombia has the largest list in world species in all over the world. For example, Colombia has more than 1,900 kind of birds, and for example, we have 84 endemic and semi-endemic species. Endemic in bird watching means that there are around 80 beers that you only can see in Colombia. This is this is pretty important because there are a lot of tourists that travel, for example, to Europe, to the North America. They travel to Colombia only to see this kind of species. And for example, in the beginning of the tourism, it was in the inception in the European and North America. It was activity for fur collection, and they hunt the bears and collect them. But now it is different. Now this activity is about contemplation the bears in their natural and the urban areas. To be with watcher, it is not necessary to be an expert in beers. For example, this is my case. I am not expert in beers. I consider an amateur. I know uh, a few things about beers, but I got the disposition. I got the attitude. But there are people that has a good equipment, a good camera, and 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 many different things that you require to be watching. But it is not necessary. You can be watching without expensive equipment. So the community base of tourism, as I told you before, is the main is the main turn in this investigation. And community base in tourism is normal in Colombia, in Latin America, because the people, the inhabitants of the rural territory, they manage the activity, and it has a good thing because, for example, the people has a good experience. The touristic experience is pretty good for the tourists because you can see a good landscape. You can, for example, in this investigation, you can watch many different kind of birds, but also you can share with the community, and you can learn about many different things, not only the peers. And it is a kind of tourism that nowadays is something that is growing because people is looking for a good experience with and sharing with other people. The community based in tourism is a term particularly new. For example, if you look for in Google Scholar, community based of tourism, um, you can't find a lot of articles and books. For example, this is a definition that we made in a book that we launched the last year in Colombia, and we made this definition, and the community-based tourism is about the bird watchers or tourists that they stay in the communities, and the inhabitants are the hosts of the territory. And it is pretty important because the community learn about ornithological species, and they can guide, or they can teach to the tourists about it. And it is pretty important because it is something new. It is something that is growing. For example, in the beginning of this investigation, that was around 2 years before, the people, the knowledge about bears in that moment was few. Now the people are learning, they are studying many different careers about natural science, tourism, and this is something that is growing. It sees a relation between the environmental appropriation and community-based and tourism, because when the people to appropriate for the natural and cultural resources, it can be in a good way and promote in a sustainable development goals, because the people see an opportunity to share and to learn about many different aspects. And also, but of course, it has an economical incomes. The methodology of this research, so we made a participatory action research, and we made some interviews, and we shared with the community. We made fireworks. We made bird watching journeys. It consists in a bird watch list, and to the birds that you are watching, you are listed, and then you take a list and you submit in a plan for denominated e-beers. That is a plan for bird watchers, and it permits to monitor and to see the beer species in the territory. And in the last thing, we made a course of beers for the community. We as academics, we teach the community many different things about beers. For example, how to identify, how to classify, how to difference between the beers, because in some cases they are pretty common, pretty particular aspects that are different. And we made this course, and this course permits to the community appropriate of these natural resources. So the results of this investigation, so we have communities has a great potential for the development. There are some aspects to improve. The interaction between the community and bird watcher occurs in a sustainable way. For example, the Avitourism has a good way. For example, in the picture that you see in the slide, there are six people, one guy, and five tourists. It is important because, for example, each tourist uh, can pay, for example, $200, and is one guide, and $1,000, and is a lot of money. And the impact in the environmental, it is not bad, because it's few people. It permits to conserve the resources, and also has a good income. But you need to learn about your species, and you need to, for example, one of the trouble that the community has is, for example, the majority of the tourists are from England to United States, and sometimes the English is the trouble. But in those cases, for example, they they take a guide, a bilingual guide. The community has a good relationships, so it means that the community is agree with this kind of tourism in the territory, and there are great variety of ornithological species in the territory. For example, this is some of the birds that you can find in the territory. We made the results about the species. For example, you can see the common name in English, and this is the family of the numbers of species. For example, in the picture that you see are the colibris. Colibris, for example, you can see only in America. You can see only in America the colibris are. And if you want to watch these birds, you can visit America. Colombia has the largest list of these species, and it is an example of those species that you can find in the territory. Many people, the the countries that has the most list in the world of bird watchers is um, China, um, United Kingdom, and United States, and they travel to Colombia, to other countries, Brazil, Peru, Bolivia, to see this kind of species. So this is the course that I told you before about the course of birds to the community, and this is an online course, and this permit to learn about many different things of the birds. Um, in the conclusion, we have a good practice in Avitourism. As I told you before, the generates a good relationships, is a good potential to the territory, because people for the community can learn about the conservation of flora and fauna, and can promote and can teach to the tourists about it. We can see the social inclusion and gender equality, and because there are a lot of women that may guide about this kind of tourism. So this investigation can apport to the Birdlife conservation, because uh, the income that the community get in this activity, it promote the the delimitation, it promotes the conservation and the appropriation from the natural resources, and bird watchings can help to the people, and not only in an economical way, but it is important because you can monitor the species. For example, you know that there are some kind of the species that are in in a danger of or extinction, and the registration of EVR, it incentivize and motivate to other people to register and to be safe, and to make the leads for these species. It is important to identify the environmental impacts. As all of we know, sometimes the tourism has a bad impact, but in this case, we can see in a positive ways, and it is important to identify the negative impacts to improve, to make a plan to change this impact. This is something that the community is progressing for the development of the environment, and obviously it traduces in good practices. And in the last thing, this is a kind of tourism that tourism award stocks, and people appreciate it because the tourists sometimes want to learn about uh, environmental appropriation and all those things made that the tourists find in this activity in a good way. And okay, some recommendations: training process, territorial limitation, conservation of the natural, and the most important thing, the encourage to the education to identify the bird life. And we made the registration of this list in beer, and we find that the cases of study of this investigation has a potential to be watching, and they are generating opportunities and they are growing in this activity. So the authors of this investigation, the teacher Andres Camilo, the bachelor in natural science, and me, a tourism researcher. Thank you for this presentation.